I watched him drive away through my tears, my wedding dress still zipped up the back, makeup streaming down my face. The note just said I can't. 6 years of silence later, I'm standing in a crowded museum with my son when a familiar voice calls my name. I turn to see David, the man I'd buried in my heart, staring at my child like he's seen a ghost. Is that? He whispers, but his voice fails as my son proudly announces, "Mommy, I won first place." David collapses against the wall, gasping for air. I never thought I'd wear white again after that day. The morning had been perfect. Mimosas with my bridesmaids, my mother fastening my grandmother's pearls around my neck, the photographer capturing every hopeful smile. I remember checking my phone for David's sweet morning text, but there was nothing. "He's just busy getting ready," Zoe had assured me, squeezing my hand. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We'd been together for 4 years. He'd proposed beneath the cherry blossoms at the Botanical Garden, my favorite place in the city. I still hear his voice sometimes, "Mira, you're my forever." What a joke that turned out to be. The first sign something was wrong was the best man's call. "Have you heard from David?" "He's not in his room." My stomach dropped, but I forced a laugh. "He's probably grabbing breakfast. You know how he gets when he's nervous." But he wasn't getting breakfast. He wasn't stuck in traffic. He wasn't anywhere he was supposed to be. 200 guests waited in a sun-drenched garden while I sat in my bridal suite, still believing he would come. Until I found the note tucked beneath my bouquet when the wedding planner brought it in. 3 words in his familiar scrawl: "I can't. Sorry." I didn't scream. I didn't faint. I walked out to the garden myself, still in my dress, and told everyone to go home. I watched my mother collapse into my father's arms, saw the pity in everyone's eyes. The whispers started immediately. What did she do? Did he find someone else? Was she pregnant and trying to trap him? I stood there, spine straight, smile frozen as my life shattered in high definition. It was Zoe who found the Instagram post that night. Vanessa, his ex, had posted a photo from inside an airport terminal. "Starting our adventure." Airplane globe showing Europe-Africa red heart. The photo was angled to show just enough of the man beside her. David's watch. David's favorite blue shirt. David's hand holding the passports. 6 years and I can still see that image when I close my eyes. I spent 3 days in bed, wedding dress crumpled in the corner where I'd dropped it. On the 4th day my mother forced me into the shower, made me eat soup, told me I would survive. "Men like that aren't worth your tears," she said, though her own eyes were red-rimmed from crying for me. I nodded, pretending to believe her, but inside I was hollow. The man I'd built my future around had vanished without a trace. And with him went all my plans, my trust, my sense of self. The worst part wasn't the humiliation. It wasn't returning the gifts or canceling the honeymoon. It wasn't even the pitying glances from coworkers when I returned to my job at the design firm. The worst part was the question that haunted me day and night. Why wasn't I enough? 6 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, I found out why the champagne had made me so sick at my bachelorette party. It wasn't the alcohol. I was pregnant. The irony wasn't lost on me. The abandoned bride carrying the child of the man who couldn't even say goodbye to her face. I sat on my bathroom floor, positive pregnancy test in hand, and laughed until I cried. Then I cried until I couldn't breathe. I considered every option, spent nights weighing choices that felt impossible. But the first time I heard that tiny heartbeat on the ultrasound, something shifted inside me. "That's your baby," the technician said, and despite everything, a fierce love bloomed in my chest. This child hadn't abandoned me. This child was innocent. This child was mine. I didn't try to find David. His parents claimed they didn't know where he was, though I never believed them. His phone number was disconnected. His email bounced back. He'd deleted all social media. It was as if David Marshall had vanished from the face of the earth, leaving nothing behind but a broken engagement and a child he would never know existed. My pregnancy wasn't easy. Morning sickness lasted all day. My blood pressure was constantly too high. My doctor worried about preeclampsia. But through it all I kept working, kept saving, kept preparing. I converted my home office into a nursery, painting the walls myself with a mural of the night sky. "You'll never be alone," I whispered to my growing belly. "I'll be your mother and your father. I'll give you everything." Lucas Alexanderchin was born on a stormy Tuesday night after 26 hours of labor. I'd never felt pain like that, not even when David left. But the moment they placed my son on my chest, wet and wailing, time stopped. He had David's chin, his dark hair, but his eyes, when they finally opened, were all mine. "Hello," I whispered, counting his perfect fingers, his tiny toes. "I've been waiting for you." Motherhood as a single parent wasn't what I'd planned, but Lucas became my world. I took just 6 weeks of maternity leave, all I could afford, before returning to the design firm with breast pump in tow. My boss was surprisingly understanding, letting me work flexible hours as long as I met deadlines. I'd bring Lucas to the office sometimes, a tiny bundle sleeping in his carrier beside my desk while I frantically finished client presentations. Money was tight. So tight that sometimes I'd skip meals to make sure there was enough formula when my milk supply dwindled from exhaustion. My parents helped when they could, but they lived 3 states away and had their own financial struggles. I learned to stretch every dollar: thrift store onesies, cloth diapers I'd wash late at night, baby food I made myself by pureeing whatever vegetables were on sale that week. When Lucas was 8 months old, I was passed over for a promotion I deserved. "We need someone who can be fully committed," my boss explained, not quite meeting my eyes. That night, after putting Lucas to bed in our tiny 1-bedroom apartment, I sat at my kitchen table and made a decision. If the corporate world wouldn't accommodate a single mother, I'd build something that would. I started freelancing on the side. Logo designs, website mockups, social media graphics. I'd work from 9 to 5 at the firm, spend evenings with Lucas, then design from 8 p.m. until my eyes burned, sometimes until 2 a.m. It was brutal, but every extra dollar meant security for my son. 6 months later, I had enough regular clients to quit my day job and launch Chin Designs from my living room. Lucas was always there, first in his playpen beside my desk, then as a toddler scribbling with crayons while I worked on my laptop. He was a quiet child, observant, with a focus unusual for his age. By 2, he could identify every color in my design palette. By 3, he was drawing recognizable shapes and objects that showed surprising spatial awareness. I'll never forget the video call with my biggest client when Lucas was 3.5. I thought he was napping, but suddenly he appeared behind me, pointed at the stern face so on screen and loudly announced, "Mean lady. She makes mommy cry." I froze in horror, but to my shock the CEO burst out laughing. "Smart kid," she said. "I like his honesty. Let's add another 20% to your fee. Sounds like you deserve it." That extra money paid for our security deposit when we moved to a slightly better apartment with actual heating that worked. As Lucas grew, so did his artistic talent. At 4, his preschool teacher pulled me aside to show me his drawings. "This isn't normal development," she said, but not with concern, with excitement. "He understands perspective, Mira. Look at how he's creating depth. Most adults can't do this." She recommended art classes, but they were expensive. Specialized instruction for gifted children always is. I still had David's engagement ring hidden away in a sock drawer. I'd never been able to part with it, telling myself it was an emergency fund. This was that emergency. The jeweler gave me far less than it's worth, but it was enough for a year of weekly lessons with a retired art professor who was captivated by Lucas's raw talent. Our apartment building had one bright spot: our neighbor Mr. Chin, no relation despite sharing a surname. He was in his 70s, a widower with grown children who rarely visited. He first noticed Lucas's drawings when they were taped to our front door, and gradually he became our family. He'd watch Lucas when I had late client meetings, teaching him Chinese characters and telling him stories about growing up in Shanghai. He never asked about Lucas's father, and I was grateful for that. By the time Lucas turned 5, my business had grown enough to hire 2 part-time designers. We moved to a 2-bedroom apartment in a safer neighborhood, close enough to walk to Lucas's school. The day we moved in, Lucas ran from room to room in excitement. "Mommy, I have my own room. With a real desk." He immediately set up his art supplies, meticulously arranging colored pencils by shade. That night, after tucking him in, I sat on our small balcony and allowed myself a moment of pride. We were making it. Not just surviving, but building something good. In the quiet, I finally admitted to myself that I hadn't thought about David in months. The pain was still there when I probed it, like a bruise not quite healed, but it no longer defined me. The next morning, as I walked Lucas to school, he suddenly asked, "Mommy, why don't I have a dad like the other kids?" I'd been preparing for this question for years, but it still caught me off guard. I knelt down to his level, brushed his dark hair from his forehead. Some families have a mom and dad, some have two moms or two dads, some just have grandparents. Ours has you and me and Mr. Chin. Different families look different, but they're all real if there's love. He considered this carefully, then nodded. Like different kinds of art, he said. All good, just different styles. I hugged him tight, blinking back tears. Yes, exactly like that. You're so smart. Mom. Look at this. Lucas burst through the door, waving a colorful flyer. It was a Thursday afternoon in spring, just after his art lesson. His cheeks were flushed with excitement, dark eyes gleaming. I set aside my laptop where I'd been finalizing designs for a new client and took the paper from his outstretched hand. Young Artists National Competition, I read aloud. Open to children ages 5 to 12. Winners exhibited at the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art. I looked up at Lucas, who was practically vibrating with anticipation. Where did you get this? Miss Patel gave it to me. She said I should enter. Miss Patel was Lucas's art teacher, a former gallery curator who'd taken a special interest in my son's talent. She said I have a real chance, Mom. Can I? Please. My heart constricted. The entry fee alone was $150. Groceries for nearly 2 weeks. And if he won, we'd need to travel for the exhibition. But the look on his face. Tell me more about what you'd need to submit, I said, buying time to calculate our budget in my head. For the next month, Lucas was consumed with his competition entry. He sketched ideas every night, rejected them, started over. He'd wake me at dawn some mornings, having had a dream inspiration. His final concept was ambitious. A triptych representing past, present, and future, with intricate details symbolizing his life journey. I watched him work with a dedication that stole my breath, so young yet so purposeful. The week before the submission deadline, disaster struck. Lucas knocked over a cup of water onto his nearly completed center panel. The special paper wrinkled, colors bleeding together. He stood frozen, staring at the ruined artwork, then burst into heartbreaking sobs. I ruined everything. I can't fix it, he wailed as I held him. The competition is in 3 days and it's all destroyed. I stroked his hair, mind racing. You can start over, honey. You have your sketches. There's not enough time. His small body shook with disappointment. That night, after Lucas finally cried himself to sleep, I called Mr. Chin. Within an hour, he arrived with art supplies I couldn't afford. Premium paper, professional-grade watercolors, and brushes that made Lucas's eyes widen the next morning. Art is about adaptation, Mr. Chin told him wisely. The greatest artists faced setbacks. Now you have a chance to make something even better. For the next 72 hours, Lucas barely slept. Neither did I. I rescheduled client meetings, ordered takeout, a rare luxury, and sat beside him, providing snacks and encouragement as his new creation took shape. It was different from his original concept, simpler in composition but somehow more powerful. A child's perspective of the world, rendered with uncanny skill. The morning of the submission deadline, Lucas carefully placed his completed artwork between sheets of archival paper. Do you think it's good enough, Mom? He asked, suddenly unsure. I knelt before him, taking in his tired face, paint-stained fingers. It's more than good enough. It's extraordinary. Like you. 2 weeks later the call came. Lucas was one of 10 finalists in his age category. The exhibition would be held that weekend. I have a problem, I told Mr. Chin that evening. My car won't make it to the city. My ancient Honda had finally died the week before and repairs were beyond my budget. No problem at all, he replied with a grin. My Cadillac needs a good drive. We'll go together. I wouldn't miss seeing Lucas's art on those fancy museum walls. The day of the competition dawned bright and clear. Lucas insisted on wearing his professional outfit. Navy blue pants, a white button-down shirt and a bow tie Mr. Chin had given him for his birthday. He clutched his portfolio case like it contained treasure. In many ways it did. The museum was intimidating, all marble floors and echoing spaces. Other children arrived with entourages, both parents, grandparents, private art instructors. Lucas had me and Mr. Chin, who wore his best suit for the occasion. I felt a familiar twinge of guilt that Lucas didn't have a father present for these moments, quickly followed by fierce pride that we'd made it this far on our own. The judging took hours. Lucas alternated between nervous silence and rapid-fire questions about the other artwork on display. I watched him studying techniques, mentally taking notes, already learning. Whatever happened today, this experience was invaluable. When the judges called the finalists forward, Lucas squeezed my hand so tightly my fingers went numb. 9 children lined up beside him, all talented, all deserving. The head judge, a distinguished-looking woman with silver hair, approached the microphone. "Art speaks to us in different ways," she began. "Sometimes it showcases technical skill. Sometimes it demonstrates creative vision. Rarely does it manage to convey genuine emotion, especially from such young artists." He paused, surveying the children. "Our first-place winner accomplished all 3. With remarkable technique, innovative composition, and emotional depth, this year's gold medal goes to Lucas Chin." Time seemed to slow. Mr. Chin cheered loudly beside me. Lucas stood frozen in shock before breaking into the biggest smile I'd ever seen. He walked carefully to accept his medal and certificate, thanking the judge with perfect politeness. Then he turned, medal gleaming against his chest, searching the crowd until he found my face. "Mom, I won first place," he shouted, voice ringing through the gallery. And that's when I heard it. A voice I'd tried for 6 years to forget. "Mira." The voice hit me like a physical blow. For a moment I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't turn around. The gallery's ambient noise faded to a distant hum. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. Not during Lucas's moment. But it was real. I forced myself to turn, and there he stood, David Marshall. 6 years older but unmistakable. His dark hair had threads of silver now, and fine lines framed his eyes, but he still had that same intensity in his gaze. He wore an expensive suit that looked tailor-made, a stark contrast to the rumpled jeans and t-shirt he'd favored when we were together. "Mira," he said again, taking a step closer. "Is that really you?" I found my voice, though it came out barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" Before he could answer, Lucas appeared at my side, medal bouncing against his chest, portfolio clutched proudly in his small hands. "Mom, did you see? They want to put my picture in a real catalog." He stopped, noticing the stranger, and looked up with curious eyes. "Who's this?" David's gaze dropped to Lucas, and I watched the color drain from his face. He stared at my son, at our son, with dawning recognition. Lucas had my eyes and smile, but everything else. The shape of his face, the cleft in his chin, the cowlick in his hair. It was all David. There was no possibility of doubt. "Is that?" David started, but his voice cracked. He leaned heavily against the wall, one hand pressed to his chest like he was having trouble breathing. Lucas, oblivious to the tension, thrust his artwork toward David. "Do you like my painting? It won first place. I used a special technique for the sky part." David looked from the painting to Lucas to me, clearly struggling to process what was happening. It's incredible," he managed to say, his voice strained. "You're very talented." "Thank you." Lucas beamed. "My mom says talent is just the beginning. You have to work hard too. I worked on this for 3 weeks and had to start over once because of an accident." I placed a protective hand on Lucas's shoulder. "Honey, we should go thank your teacher for helping you prepare." I needed to get my son away from David, needed time to think, to breathe, to prepare for the conversation I'd both dreaded and rehearsed in my mind for years. "But Mom, I want to show Mr. Chin my medal first." "Mira, please," David said, his voice low and urgent. "Just 5 minutes." That's when I noticed the woman approaching us. Tall, elegantly dressed in a designer outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, with the confident stride of someone used to commanding attention. She looked even more beautiful than I remembered, her blonde hair now cut in a sophisticated bob, diamond earrings catching the light. She slipped her arm through David's, then froze when she saw me. "Oh," she said simply, her perfect features arranging themselves into a mask of polite surprise. "Hello, Mira." The surreal quality of the moment intensified. Here we were, the abandoned bride, the runaway groom, the other woman, and the child who knew nothing of the history connecting us all, standing in a prestigious art gallery like characters in some absurd play. "Vanessa," I acknowledged with a stiff nod. Lucas tugged at my hand. "Mom, who are these people?" Before I could answer, Mr. Chin appeared beside us, sensing the tension. "Lucas. There you are, champion. Why don't you come show me where they're going to display your artwork? He glanced between David, Vanessa, and me, understanding immediately that something was wrong. Can I, Mom? Lucas asked. Yes, go with Mr. Chen. I'll be right there. I watched them walk away, Lucas chattering excitedly before turning back to face the two people who had shattered my world 6 years ago. He's mine, isn't he? David said the moment Lucas was out of earshot. It wasn't really a question. He's mine, I corrected coldly. You lost any claim to him the day you left. David ran a shaking hand through his hair. I didn't know. Mira, you have to believe me. I had no idea you were pregnant. Would it have changed anything? I asked, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably beside him. That's what I thought, I said, turning to leave. Wait. David reached for my arm but stopped short of touching me. Please. We need to talk about this. He's my son. No. The word came out sharp as glass. He's not. Biology doesn't make you a father. 6 years of bedtime stories, doctor's appointments, nightmares, first steps, scraped knees, and school projects make you a parent. You weren't there for any of it. I deserve a chance to explain, David insisted, desperation creeping into his voice. David, Vanessa murmured, perhaps this isn't the place. I looked between them, noticing the matching wedding bands. You two married then? David nodded. 3 years ago. Congratulations, I said flatly. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to get back to my son. This is his day and I won't let you ruin it. Mira, please, David's voice cracked. Can we meet somewhere to talk? Tomorrow maybe? I need to understand. I need to know him. I was about to refuse when I saw Lucas watching us from across the gallery, his eyes curious. I realized with a sinking feeling that this wouldn't end here. David had seen him now. The careful life I'd built was about to change whether I wanted it to or not. Fine. Coffee shop on Maple Street. 10 tomorrow morning. I turned away before he could respond, walking quickly back to Lucas and Mr. Chen, forcing a smile onto my face that felt like it might shatter at any moment. Is everything okay, Mom? Lucas asked as I approached. I brushed his hair back from his forehead, my heart aching. Everything's fine, sweetheart. Today is your day and nothing is going to change that. But even as I said it, I knew everything had already changed. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw David's face. The shock, the realization, the way he'd stared at Lucas like he was seeing a ghost. I checked on Lucas repeatedly, watching his peaceful sleep, trying to imagine how I would explain this to him. My son, who had never asked for much but deserved everything, who had grown up believing his father was just some vague figure who wasn't in our lives. How would I tell him that his father had abandoned us both before he was even born? Or should I protect him from that truth? Morning came too quickly. I dropped Lucas at his Saturday art enrichment class, telling him I had a business meeting. It wasn't entirely a lie. This was about protecting our future. The coffee shop was busy with weekend customers. I arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a table in the corner with a clear view of the door. I ordered black coffee I didn't want just to have something to hold on to. David arrived exactly at 10 alone. He scanned the room anxiously before spotting me. He dressed more casually today, dark jeans and a gray sweater that I didn't recognize. For a bizarre moment, I wondered if Vanessa had picked it out for him. Thank you for coming, he said, sliding into the seat across from me. Up close, I could see the dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't slept either. Let's skip the pleasantries, I said. You wanted to talk. So talk. He nodded, rubbing his palms against his thighs, a nervous habit I'd forgotten about until this moment. How old is he? 6. He'll be 7 in August. David did the mental calculation. So you were 6 weeks pregnant when you left me at the altar? Yes. He flinched. I didn't know, Mira. I swear to God I didn't know. Would it have mattered? I asked again the same question from yesterday. This time he answered. I don't know. I want to say yes, but honestly, I was a mess back then. I was scared and selfish and... He trailed off, staring into his untouched coffee. I know nothing I say will justify what I did to you. You're right about that, I said evenly. He took a deep breath. I owe you an explanation. Not excuses, I know there aren't any, but the truth about why I left. Part of me wanted to tell him I didn't care anymore, that his reasons were irrelevant after 6 years. But another part, the part that had lain awake countless nights wondering what I'd done wrong, needed to hear it. I'm listening. David's eyes met mine, then darted away. Vanessa's father is Lawrence Bennett. The name hit me like a punch to the stomach. Lawrence Bennett, CEO of Bennett Financial Group, one of the largest investment firms in the country. I'd met him once at a dinner with David, a cold, intimidating man who'd barely acknowledged my existence. 2 weeks before our wedding, Vanessa contacted me. Said her father wanted to meet. I thought it was strange but agreed. When I got there, it wasn't just her and her father. They had evidence. Evidence of what? I asked, confused. Financial fraud at my firm. Documents showing my boss was involved in illegal trading practices. Mr. Bennett made it clear. The evidence would go to the SEC unless I did exactly what they wanted. I stared at him. Which was? Leave you. Return to Vanessa. Take a position at Bennett Financial. His voice was hollow. They had already purchased tickets to Zurich. The plan was for me to disappear with Vanessa that day. And you just agreed? I couldn't keep the incredulity from my voice. I was a coward, he said simply. I convinced myself I was protecting you, that if the scandal broke you'd be dragged into it too. But really I was protecting myself. My career was everything to me then. The irony was breathtaking. All these years I'd wondered if I hadn't been pretty enough, smart enough, good enough. And the answer was so mundane. Money and power. So you married Vanessa to save your career, I summarized flatly. He nodded, misery etched in his face. 3 years ago. Her father made it clear it was the next step if I wanted to advance at the firm. I can't call it a marriage. More like a business arrangement. He laughed without humor. We don't even share a bedroom anymore. I didn't come here for your marital problems, David. No, I know. I want you to understand that I've been paying for my mistake every day since I left you. A flare of anger rose in me. Paying? You left me humiliated in front of everyone I love. You abandoned your child before he was even born. You've been living in luxury while I worked 3 jobs to make rent during my pregnancy. Don't talk to me about paying for your mistakes. He had the grace to look ashamed. You're right. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. It doesn't change anything. What can I do then? There was desperation in his voice. I have a son I never knew existed. I've missed 6 years of his life. I want to know him, Mira. I want to be part of his life. That's not your decision to make, I said firmly. Lucas has grown up without you. He's happy, he's well-adjusted, he's thriving. I won't let you disrupt his life because you suddenly have regrets. David leaned forward, his eyes pleading. Just a chance. That's all I'm asking for. Let me meet him, properly. Get to know him. And what happens when you get bored? Or when Vanessa's father decides he doesn't want you playing daddy to a child from your previous relationship? His expression hardened. This isn't about Vanessa or her father. This is about my son. My son, I corrected. The son I raised alone. The son who has never asked for anything from you. I have rights, Mira, he said quietly. Legal rights. The threat hung in the air between us. I felt cold dread settling in my stomach. Are you threatening to take me to court? I don't want it to come to that, David said, but his tone made it clear he wouldn't hesitate if necessary. But yes, if that's what it takes to be part of Lucas's life, I'll do it. I stood up, gathering my purse. Then I guess we're done talking. Contact me through my lawyer from now on. Mira, wait. But I was already walking away, tears burning behind my eyes. I wouldn't let him see me cry. Not again. Never again. The letter arrived 3 days later. Crisp, official stationery from Wexler and Brimley, one of the most expensive law firms in the city. David wasn't wasting any time. He was filing for paternity testing and visitation rights, claiming he had been unaware of Lucas's existence and was being unreasonably denied access to his biological child. My hands trembled as I read it, a sickening déjà vu of that wedding day note. Another piece of paper that threatened to destroy everything. I waited until Lucas was asleep before breaking down, muffling my sobs with a pillow. I couldn't let him see me like this. I couldn't let him know how scared I was. Finding a lawyer I could afford proved nearly impossible. I called 12 different family law attorneys. Most quoted retainers of $5,000 or more. Money I simply didn't have. I considered representing myself until Mr. Chin found me hunched over printouts of family law statutes at 1 a.m. "This is no good, Mira," he said gently, taking the papers from my hands. "You need professional help." "I can't afford it," I admitted, embarrassed. "And I can't lose Lucas." The next day Mr. Chin drove me to meet Elena Rodriguez, a former colleague's daughter who specialized in family law. Her office was modest in a converted Victorian house downtown, nothing like the gleaming skyscraper where Wexler and Brimley operated. Elena was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with a no-nonsense demeanor and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She listened to my story without interruption, taking meticulous notes. "So the father abandoned you before the child was born, made no attempt to contact you for 6 years, and now suddenly wants parental rights," she summarized when I finished. "And he's represented by Wexler and Brimley, which means he has significant resources." I nodded miserably. "It's not ideal," she admitted. "But it's not hopeless either. Courts generally favor established parental relationships, which your ex simply doesn't have. What we need to prove is that introducing him into Lucas's life now would be disruptive and potentially harmful." "And how much will this cost?" I asked, dreading the answer. Elena named a figure that made my stomach drop. It was lower than the other attorneys had quoted, but still far beyond my means. "I can take installments," she added, seeing my face. "And I might be able to get the court to order him to pay your legal fees, given the disparity in your financial situations." I left her office with a retainer agreement I couldn't afford to sign and a crushing weight on my shoulders. That evening Mr. Chin knocked on my door with a small lockbox in his hands. "My retirement savings," he explained, placing it on my kitchen table. "It's not much, but it should cover your legal fees." "I can't accept this," I protested, horrified. "That's your money." "And what will I spend it on?" he countered. "My children are grown with their own money. I have no wife to travel with." His eyes crinkled at the corners. "But I do have you and Lucas. You're my family now. Family helps family." I wept as I signed the retainer agreement the next morning, promising myself I would repay Mr. Chin somehow, someday. The legal process moved with excruciating slowness. First came the paternity test, which confirmed what we all already knew. David was Lucas's biological father. Then came the financial disclosures, revealing the vast gulf between my modest income and David's 7-figure salary at Bennett Financial. Each filing, each response, each motion cost more money, more time, more emotional energy I couldn't spare. Through it all, I tried to shield Lucas from what was happening. But children are perceptive. He noticed my reddened eyes in the mornings, the hushed phone calls, the tense expressions when I thought he wasn't looking. "Are you sad, Mom?" he asked one night as I tucked him in. "No, baby," I lied, smoothing his hair. "Just a little tired from work." He studied my face with those solemn eyes that sometimes seemed too old for his years. "Is it about that man from the museum? The one who couldn't breathe right?" My heart stuttered. "Why do you ask?" Lucas fidgeted with his blanket. "I heard you talking to Mr. Chin about him. And then you got a big envelope that made you cry." I sat on the edge of his bed, considering what to say. I'd always promised myself I wouldn't lie to my son, but how much truth could a 6-year-old handle? "That man. His name is David," I said carefully. "He's someone I knew a long time ago." "Is he a bad person?" Lucas asked. "No," I answered truthfully. "He made some bad choices, but that doesn't make him a bad person." Lucas nodded, processing this. "Is he why you're sad?" "It's complicated, honey. Grown-up stuff." He was quiet for a moment. "Is he my dad?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't expected it so directly, so suddenly. I opened my mouth but no words came out. "It's okay if he is," Lucas continued, mistaking my silence for confirmation. "Jake at school has a dad he never sees. And Sophia has 2 dads. Everyone's different." I took a deep breath. "Yes, he is your biological father. But being a father is about more than biology. It's about being there, taking care of someone, loving them every day." "Like you do," Lucas said simply. "Yes, like I do." I swallowed hard. "David. He wasn't ready to be a father when you were born. And now he wants to be?" "He says he does." Lucas considered this. Do I have to see him if I don't want to? I'm doing everything I can to make sure you don't have to do anything you don't want to, I promised, though I wasn't certain I could keep it. The court date was set for the following month. Elena was preparing our case, gathering evidence of the stable, happy life Lucas and I had built together. But David's lawyers were relentless, demanding everything from my medical records during pregnancy to Lucas's school reports. Anything they could use to paint me as obstructing a father's natural rights. The afternoon before our preliminary hearing, my doorbell rang. I opened it expecting Elena with last-minute preparations. Instead, I found Vanessa standing there, perfectly poised in designer clothes, a large envelope clutched in her manicured hands. "We need to talk," she said, her voice lacking its usual confidence. "About David. About your son. There's something you need to know." I should have slammed the door in her face. This woman had been the catalyst for the worst day of my life. The woman David had chosen over me, over our vows, over our future together. But the urgency in her voice and the unusual vulnerability in her expression stopped me. 5 minutes, I said, stepping aside to let her in. "Lucas is at art class. He'll be home soon." Vanessa entered, her eyes taking in our modest apartment with what looked like genuine curiosity rather than judgment. She seemed different from the confident socialite who had appeared at the gallery, more hesitant, almost nervous. "Is David with you?" I asked, glancing behind her. "No. He doesn't know I'm here." She set the envelope on my coffee table, her hands trembling slightly. "He would be furious if he found out." I remained standing, arms crossed. "Why are you here, Vanessa?" She met my eyes directly. "Because what David's doing isn't right. And because..." He paused, seeming to search for words. "Because I've spent 6 years living with a lie and I can't do it anymore." "What lie?" Vanessa sank onto my couch, suddenly looking exhausted. "David told you about my father's blackmail. About the fraud evidence." I nodded and she continued. "What he didn't tell you, what he may not even admit to himself anymore, is that he knew about your pregnancy before we left." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. "What? You called his mother the day after he left, right? Told her you needed to speak to David urgently?" At my stunned nod, she continued. "She called him immediately. You'd already told her you thought you might be pregnant." My mind raced back to that desperate phone call, made from the bathroom floor of what should have been our honeymoon suite. David's mother had been cold but not surprised by his disappearance. She'd promised to relay my message. "He knew," I whispered, the betrayal fresh as yesterday. "He knew about Lucas and still stayed away?" Vanessa nodded, remorse evident in her face. "My father. He convinced David that the child might not be his. That you'd been unfaithful. It was a lie, obviously, but David was already feeling trapped by my father's other threats. It gave him the excuse he needed." Anger flared white hot. "And you're just telling me this now? After 6 years?" "I wanted to believe we could make it work," she admitted quietly. "That David would eventually love me the way he loved you. But he never did. Our marriage has been a sham from the beginning. A business arrangement to please my father. We've been separated for months, though we keep up appearances in public." She reached for the envelope. "What you don't know is that before we left, my father made David sign something. Insurance, he called it." She withdrew a document and handed it to me. "David signed away his parental rights to any child resulting from his relationship with you, in exchange for a position at Bennett Financial." I stared at the paper in disbelief. There it was in black and white. A legal document dated 1 day before our wedding with David's unmistakable signature at the bottom. A document surrendering all parental rights to any child born from our relationship in perpetuity. A document that effectively ended David's legal claim to Lucas before it began. "Why?" My voice cracked. "Why would your father want this?" "Control," Vanessa said simply. "He wanted to eliminate any tie that might draw David back to you. And he didn't want the Bennett name attached to a child he couldn't control. My father is obsessed with legacy." I sank into the chair opposite her, document clutched in my hands. "Does David remember signing this?" "I don't know. He was drinking heavily that night. My father may have presented it as standard employment paperwork." He shrugged. "Or David may have known exactly what he was signing and has convinced himself otherwise. Either way, it's legally binding." Why are you giving this to me? I asked, suspicious of her motives. Why now? Vanessa looked down at her perfectly manicured hands. I'm filing for divorce next week. My father has terminal cancer. 3 months, maybe less. His control over both of us is ending. And... She hesitated. I saw your son at the gallery. He looks happy, well-adjusted. David charging back into his life now just because he suddenly feels entitled to be a father. It isn't right. I studied her face, trying to reconcile this woman with the villain I'd constructed in my mind over the years. You could have mailed this anonymously. Why come in person? Because I owe you an apology, she said simply. I knew what my father was doing to you was wrong. I knew David loved you, not me. But I went along with it anyway because I thought eventually he'd forget you. A bitter smile twisted her lips. He never did. Your picture was still in his wallet when we left. He was looking at it the night before our wedding. The revelation was like a dull knife to the heart. Not the sharp pain it might once have been, but an ache nonetheless. David had loved me, then chosen status and security over that love. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Vanessa continued, standing to leave. Just giving you the weapon you need to protect your son. I stared at the document in my hands. David will fight this. He'll claim coercion, say he didn't know what he was signing. Let him try. A flash of the old Vanessa appeared, confident, steely. My father may be dying, but he still has influence. If David pursues this, I'll testify that he knew exactly what he was signing. And I have other evidence, emails, recordings, proving he knew about your pregnancy and chose to walk away. She moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for the wedding, but for the 6 years of peace you should have had with your son. After she left, I sat motionless, staring at the document that could end this nightmare. Part of me felt triumphant. I had the means to stop David's legal attack cold. Another part felt a different kind of pain. The man I'd once loved hadn't just abandoned me. He'd willingly signed away our child's future before even knowing if I was pregnant. The callousness of it was breathtaking. I was still sitting there when Elena arrived for our pre-court meeting. Her eyes widened as she read the document. This changes everything, she said, already pulling out her phone. I need to file this with the court immediately. Will it work? I asked. Will it stop him? Elena looked up from her phone, the first genuine smile I'd seen on her face since we'd met. Mira, this isn't just a roadblock. This is a concrete wall. David signed away his parental rights before Lucas was even born. No judge will overturn this without extraordinary circumstances, which simply don't exist here. For the first time in weeks, I felt myself breathe fully. The weight that had been crushing me began to lift. David couldn't take my son. He had no legal right to Lucas. We were safe. All rise. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Harmon entered, a stern-faced woman with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. I stood on trembling legs, hyper-aware of David and his legal team at the table across the aisle. He hadn't looked at me once since we'd entered the courtroom, his face ashen after Elena had submitted Vanessa's document to the court yesterday. Be seated, Judge Harmon instructed, settling behind the bench. I've reviewed the filings in this case, including the recent submission by the respondent. She fixed David with a penetrating stare. Mr. Marshall, are you familiar with the document your ex-fiancé has submitted? A pre-birth relinquishment of parental rights dated April 15, 6 years ago. David's attorney leaned in to whisper something, but David shook his head slightly. Yes, Your Honor, he admitted, his voice hollow. Though I contest the circumstances under which it was signed. So noted, Judge Harmon replied, unmoved. However, the document appears legally executed, witnessed, and notarized. Additionally, the court observes that regardless of this document, you made no attempt to locate or support your child for 6 years. Her tone sharpened. No birthday cards, no child support payments, no inquiries about his welfare. Is that correct? David shifted uncomfortably. I was led to believe there was no child, Your Honor. By whom? Judge Harmon asked. By. David faltered. It's complicated. I find that most abandonment is, the judge replied dryly. Mr. Marshall, this court takes a dim view of parents who suddenly develop an interest in their children only when it's convenient for them. Miss Chin has raised this child alone since birth. By all accounts, School records, character references, the child's obvious well-being. She's done an exemplary job. She shuffled some papers, then continued. In light of the valid relinquishment of parental rights and the circumstances of this case, I'm denying your petition for paternity rights and visitation. Ms. Chen will retain full legal and physical custody of the minor child. The relinquishment document will stand. Relief flooded through me so intensely I nearly collapsed, Elena's steadying hand on my arm the only thing keeping me upright. Across the aisle, David buried his face in his hands. Your Honor, his attorney interjected, we request the opportunity to challenge the validity of the relinquishment document. My client was under duress. Your client was an adult making a choice, Judge Harmon interrupted. A choice with consequences. Save your arguments for the appeal if you choose to file one. She gathered her papers. This matter is concluded. Court is adjourned. The sharp crack of the gavel echoed through the room like a final punctuation mark on this chapter of our lives. I turned to Elena, tears of relief spilling down my cheeks. It's over, she said, squeezing my hand. You won. Outside the courtroom, I called Mr. Chen to share the news. He was with Lucas at the park, deliberately keeping him distracted during the hearing. We'll celebrate tonight, he promised. I'm making Lucas's favorite dumplings. I was almost to the parking lot when I heard footsteps hurrying behind me. Mira, wait. I turned to find David alone, his expensive suit wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed. Please, he said, keeping a respectful distance. Just 1 minute. After everything, I should have walked away. But something in his defeated posture made me pause. What do you want, David? To apologize, he said quietly. Not for the court case, though I'm sorry about that too, but for what I did 6 years ago. For leaving you. For not being strong enough to fight for what mattered. I studied him, this man who had once been the center of my world, now a stranger. I don't need your apology. I stopped needing anything from you a long time ago. I know, he acknowledged. But I needed to say it anyway. And I need you to know that I'll respect the judge's decision. No appeals, no more legal battles. You won't hear from me again unless you want to. I nodded, uncertain what to say. Part of me, a small vindictive part, wanted to hurt him to make him feel the pain I'd felt. But looking at him now, I realized he was already suffering. He'd lost everything that truly mattered and was only now realizing it. Lucas is an incredible kid, I said finally. Talented, kind, perceptive. None of that is because of you. Remember that. His face crumpled slightly. I will. Take care of him, Mira. Be happy. I watched him walk away, not with the confident stride of the man who'd abandoned me, but with the heavy steps of someone carrying the weight of his mistakes. For the first time I felt something unexpected. Pity. David would have to live with his choices forever, while I got to go home to the greatest joy of my life. 6 months later, life had found a new rhythm. Lucas continued to flourish in his art classes, winning another competition and earning a scholarship to a prestigious weekend program. My design business expanded to a small office space, allowing me to hire 2 full-time employees. The shadows of the court battle faded, replaced by the steady light of ordinary days filled with school pickups, client meetings, and family dinners with Mr. Chen. David kept his word. No more legal filings, no unexpected appearances. Vanessa sent a brief email letting me know their divorce was finalized and she was moving to Europe. The chapter was truly closed. It was at one of Lucas's art exhibitions that I met James. He was there with his niece who was also displaying artwork. Tall, with kind eyes and an easy laugh, he complimented Lucas's painting with genuine appreciation, talking to my son at eye level about technique and inspiration. When he finally introduced himself to me, it was with a warmth that had nothing to do with romantic interest and everything to do with shared enthusiasm for supporting creative children. Our first date was a museum visit with both kids in tow. Hardly romantic but somehow perfect. By our 3rd date, Lucas was asking when Mr. James would visit again. By our 10th, I found myself imagining a future I hadn't dared to picture since David left. He makes you smile more, Lucas observed one night as I tucked him in. I like that. I like it too, I admitted. Do you love him? The directness of children never ceased to amaze me. I considered the question honestly. I'm starting to. Is that okay with you? Lucas nodded solemnly. He doesn't try to be my dad. He's just James. That's good. On a warm spring evening a year after the court hearing, James proposed. Not with a flashy diamond or grand gesture, but with a simple question asked while we sat on my apartment balcony after Lucas was asleep. "I love you both," he said. "I want to build a life together, if you're ready." I was. Our wedding was everything my first almost wedding wasn't. Small, intimate, joyful without pretense. Lucas stood beside me as my best man, proudly holding the rings. Mr. Chin walked me down the aisle, beaming with pride. There were no expensive centerpieces or designer gown, just genuine happiness and the family we had built through choice rather than obligation. As James and I spoke our vows, I realized how far I'd come from that heartbroken woman in a wedding dress watching her future drive away. That day had felt like an ending, but it had actually been a beginning. The first step on a path that led to Lucas, to strength I never knew I possessed, to a love built on respect and choice rather than desperation or convenience. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are doorways to the best ones, if we're brave enough to walk through them. I had walked through mine and found everything I never knew I needed waiting on the other side.